presiding officer of the Suffolk County Legislature. During my tenure, I promoted government transparency and open access to government. This show is brought to you with the intention of informing the public through community engagement. You will hear from various local officials, community advocates, and leaders. Please enjoy the show.
And as always, we are so delighted that you have created this format and this platform for us to have these community conversations. Friends, you are watching and listening to Dwayne Gregory Presents. He's the presiding officer of the Suffolk County Legislature. He's also a county legislator for the 18th Legislative District here on Long Island. I am Andy C. Luter, and I am joined by Tanya Luter Gordon and Rosalind Luter Aaron, and collectively we represent Luter Life Coaches. That LLC company has partnered with Dwayne Gregory to produce these programs of community interest. And so I want to welcome both Tanya and Rosalind, my sisters, who co-host this program with me. And again, thank Dwayne Gregory for making this possible. Tanya, say hello very, very quickly.
Hello. Again, we are so excited about you being a part of this interview that we're doing. And we're ecstatic that we have Alicia Marks, who is the founder and the proprietor of Marks of Excellence, which is an educational institution in North Amityville that educates from babies up to 7th grade.
And Rosalind, say hello to us.
Greetings and welcome. We are delighted that you're joining with us today, and we are so excited about what we have to share at this point and at this juncture.
Again, I am Andy C. Luter, and I am a part of Luter Life Coaches, and I want to welcome as well Alicia Marks from Marks of Excellence being with us today, and we have so much to talk about. This is actually the second time that she has been with us. We've had her before, and this is the second part of our conversation with her because she represents so much. We could not capture it all in a single half hour. So welcome back, Alicia Marks, to everything that we're trying to do. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
All right, here's where I would like to go today. And I'm actually fielding this question to all three of the persons who are on screen, both Tanya, Rosalind, and Alicia. You all are the benefactors of an HBCU, a historically black college and university. Yes. Spelman College in particular, all of you are graduates of Spelman College. But here is the curious question that I want to raise and ask, and that is, going to Spelman had to be a bit of a transition for you. Yes. Because in the case of you, Alicia, yes, you graduated from West Babylon High School. North Babylon. I'm sorry. Okay. There is a difference. There is a difference.
We were rivals. North.
And North Babylon didn't have a whole lot of people who looked like us. And so you were in a predominantly white institution. Correct. And then you transitioned to a black institution. Correct. Both in the case of Rosalind and Tanya, you're both graduates, as am I, of Long Island Lutheran High School, yes, which in the early 70s was a predominantly white institution. It has changed somewhat here of late, but at that point, it was primarily a white institution. And so yes, both of you transitioned yes, from that kind of institution to the Black Mecca, Atlanta, Georgia. Yes, and then yes, in the yes, Black Mecca yes, is this HBCU. So let me start with you, Rosalind, very, very quickly. Talk about the transition, because that was back in the early 70s. Now, Tanya and Alicia came along a little later on. But to kind of put this, in historical context, what was that transition like in the early 1970s, which is 40 years ago?
Well, I would say this. I remember pulling up into the campus. My father brought me to Spelman College. They had assigned a room for me in a particular dormitory, and he wasn't pleased with that. Regardless, I had never been away from home before. I had never been around this many women, African Americans, period. So it was culture shock. It really was culture shock. I can remember my father unpacking my bag and putting my clothes into the into the drawers, and I was right behind them, taking them out and putting them back in the in the suitcases. So that was my experience. That's how I actually. That's what I remember in terms of how I was impacted by that.
Okay.
Yes.
And Tanya, you came a few years later. Of course, you say much later.
7 years later. That's significant. Yeah.
You did have to say 40 years, didn't you?
Yeah.
And of course, Alicia came a year after you. But what was it like that year that you transitioned from Lutheran High School to Spelman College?
Well, it was an experience, but I was ready because when we took Rosalind to Spelman, I remember I was wearing gloves at the President's Tea. And I said, y'all can leave me here. I'm ready to start. Now, Rosalind said, fine, you leave her, and I'm ready to go home. I'm going to go home. So I think it prepared me because I loved the experience. It was so different from what I was used to. Of course, Long Island Lutheran High School, African Americans, people of color, represented a very small number in the population. And even though that helped prepare me for my professional life, how to be comfortable and how to engage with people with other ethnic backgrounds, the experience of Spelman was phenomenal because it was culturally so enriching. And I just loved it. It was just something that I could have never imagined. And of course, I knew I wanted to go to Spelman from the time we took Rosalind. So it was wonderful. And I think what it poured into me was how to be a strong African-American woman who could endure anything. And those tools have stayed with me even today.
All righty. And a year after that, Alicia,
yes,
here you leave North Babylon,
yes,
and you arrive on the campus of Spelman in Atlanta.
And in North Babylon, I would say the ratio between whites and blacks was about 70-30. And but living in an all-black neighborhood, as we today know how Long Island has been designated with minority pockets, that was my first experience, aside from my family, to go to I couldn't imagine what it would be like to be in an all-black campus. So when I told my parents that I was considering Spelman, I said, I can't make a decision without seeing it. And they didn't have black college tours then. So my father said, I understand, so we're going. So he put me on the plane, we flew to Spelman, and when I walked around and saw, I was ready to. I was ready. I said, now this is the place for me, because it was, as you said, so much cultural positiveness. I mean, even commercials had black people on them. Outside in restaurants and banks, there were managers that looked like me, and the professors. I just felt like I was in the midst of royalty. And at an educational level, that there's no better feeling than to say you're with scholars that look like me. The president of the college looks like me, although at that time the president was a man. But Janetta B. Cole was the very first female president of Spelman, which unfortunately was after I had gone. But I want you to know that I felt that it was a positive experience because you were so engulfed in everything African American. I remember going to see Stokely Carmichael at Spelman, who came and spoke. I remember Al Sharpton came and spoke. Where on earth would you at that age come in such close contact with these icons? And I was told by my scholarly cousin, Dr. Gloria Dickinson, that it's at the HBCUs that these corporate entities come and look for the cream of the crop.
That's right.
So I had been kind of spurred before I decided to make that decision, but I don't regret it one bit.
Well, now, and I want to just kind of touch on this before I exit this topic and this subject. In the case of Tanya and Alicia, in addition to the white glove majesty of Spelman College, and in the case of Rosalind and Tanya, our mother went to Spelman as well, and so we have these multi-generational thing going on. And so the reason They were encouraged to go to Spelman because that's where Mom had gone.
Yes.
And in the case of Tanya and Alicia, not only did you have this white glove, majestic experience of being on the campus of Spelman, but that's where you pledged AKA. So talk a bit about your sorority life and how that was entwined with the experience at Spelman.
So yes, I pledged my sophomore year, which was rather interesting, traumatic, but I would take nothing for it. It really helped mold me in such a way, and I think that it had really enhanced, let's say, my educational experience, career. Now I know with Alicia, she did not pledge at Spelman. She pledged when you transferred to Rutgers. Mm-hmm. And so talk to us about what your experience was like.
Well, I will start at Spelman because it started with you. Because I would watch my Spelman sisters walk around campus with their pink and green and their letters, and Greekdom there's nothing like it on a black campus. Yeah. It helps further identify you as who you are in the masses. And I would talk to Tanya, and she knew that my mother and my cousins, I come from a long legacy of Alpha Kappa Alpha women, but my experiences were all positive. All, that sisterhood, there's nothing like it. And so when you come from that legacy, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. Where are you going? What you're gonna pledge? But it just enhances you to another level of responsibility, of upholding, that legacy.
Yeah. So, if
yes.
I may interject.
Sure.
Not being an AKA, I can speak to the experience and the strength that is gained from going to a university or a college like Spelman.
Yeah.
Because as you mentioned, Dr. Cole,
Yes.
that was during my era, because we had to do some things to get Dr. Cole in. We had to shut down the Commons. There was some very, very, very out of the box experiences that we had. The student Commons were shut down for several days because we would not accept that there was no American of African descent, female, that was qualified to be the president of Spelman College. So we shut it down. And
Beautiful choice too.
yeah, and then here cometh Dr. Cole.
Yeah.
So
I want to come back to you, Rosalind, because you've actually prepared some specific questions in the area of education, and that's the niche that Alicia Marks specializes in. Yeah. And so I'm anxious to hear this portion of our conversation as it relates to the ideology of education. Not only the practice of it as a vocation, but even the ideology of it.
Okay, well, most of us are aware that the first classroom is the home. Yes. And the first teachers are the parents or the primary caregivers within the home. And I'm going to actually combine this with the second question, because I would like to know how we may more effectively prepare our youngsters that transition from home being the first school to formal, into that formal space. And then in addition to that, how we actually can make the most of what is now available in just about every state, and that is the pre-K program. What strategies can you give caregivers and parents in this regard?
Well, you would think during early childhood education that curriculum, and everyone is focusing on our educational status in this country, which is not very good at this point in time. And so, that being said, on every level of education, we're pouring in tests. And we are tracking students and children and trying to make teachers the only panacea, if you will, for education and what comes from that, and calling them on the mark. You either educate our children in the right way that we say, or you'll lose your job. And I beg to differ with that process. I feel that in early childhood education is the most important and the most prominent part of education. And it's the place in where children are yielded for success. It starts at the beginning. It starts at the foundation. It does even start in the womb. And so I had written a paper called EQ versus IQ. I have to talk like Bishop.
I love it.
Watch this. You know, during his sermons, I always listen to him say, watch this. But what I came to realize in all the 22 years that I've had a business in early childhood education, that it's really the emotional quotient versus the intelligent quotient for our children.
Yes.
Because they don't always come from the same grassroots as other communities. They are maybe starting a step behind. And if they don't have a good self-esteem, if they don't feel that they're in the number as we felt at Spelman, now we know how others feel in the world that's totally about them. And until you experience that, you don't realize that the sky's the limit. It's not just about one person that looks like you. It's about a community that looks like you. That I have choices. That I have a path that I can build on my own. So when you start in the beginning at infancy, it comes down to the mere fact of a touch, a smile, someone in your face communicating with you that is so crucial, and without that, it's traumatic. And we talk about traumatizing situations that happen to babies that do spur up later on in life based on the emotional feelings that they had at the time of the incident. It's true. Whether they could speak or not, emotionally they feel the trauma, and it does have effects on whether it's drugs, alcohol, depression. All of this plays into your success as a human being. And so at Marks of Excellence, we do believe that nurturing is the #1 key to caring for a child. The tone in which you speak to a child, the way you hold a child, touch a child, and that pushes academics to the wayside, doesn't it? And so by the time they get to kindergarten or first grade, they feel confident. They feel that someone else believed in me and cared for me in such a way that makes me feel that I'm going to be a success.
Awesome.
So IQ versus EQ is how I truly believe.
That's great. I absolutely love that because I feel you are totally on point in all of those areas. The remaining question I have here again, I'm going to actually bundle in the interest of time. The word on the street is that individuals coming from our community who look like us, if they're not reading by the time they are in the 4th grade, they're targeted. They're targeted for incarceration. They're targeted for paths that are not as productive as other youngsters. So that is the first part of the question. The second part of the question, and of course you all know I'm from Georgia, and I'm not really sure of what the policy is here in New York, but I do know that in Georgia, if a youngster is in the middle school and they are not performing on grade level, that by law, their parent can insist that they be promoted to the next grade. Now, I may feel that that is a setup because I understand that education is a sequential process, particularly things like mathematics. What are your thoughts in both of those regards, and what is your recommendation?
Well, I do believe that a lot of parents from our community are afraid of labeling their children.
Excellent.
And not having much experience at the elementary school level, other learning vicariously through my father in Roosevelt, I really can speak to the early childhood segment, and that would be trying to make parents feel comfortable enough and knowing that they're doing what's best for the child, not to ignore the signs or the symptoms. And might I add that every year we are seeing children with more and more special needs. We have more and more therapists in the daycare than we have had in past years. And so I wish I had a second floor specifically for that, because you know, you're putting them in the rooms with the other teachers or in the hallways or my staff lounge. I really don't have the space for that. But we do what we have to, and it's all predicated on the parent's approval. And if that child does not agree to the early intervention that the child needs at that early stage, it's really called for by the age of 3, which is really important. And so we need to redirect our parents and educate them to understand that, just like breast cancer, early detection is key. And children, it's okay. Your child may be targeted, but the earlier the better, so that these issues that you say come up later on in life don't occur. So it may have to do with a special need that needs to be tapped into. If they're dyslexic, if they have issues with a delay in speech, or the digestion or the cognitive issues are not all falling into place, we need to take care of that. So I do believe that if a child is not reading by the 4th grade, there is, they're reading by kindergarten. They are reading these days in New York by kindergarten. And so having a universal pre-K program through the Copiague School District, they are taking steps now at 4 years old at the pre-K level to teach them reading. So to answer your question, I don't know if I answered it. I feel that our parents need to be more educated, and the only way to do that is to have them come in for additional parenting skills and have more conversations. And our parents are so young and they're so busy. Yes. They're working more than one job. We need to try and influence them to see that at this stage it's important, not just parent-teacher conferences on the elementary school level, but at this stage, at this juncture, they need to take huge steps to focus on their academic success for the future.
If I may, because you are absolutely answering the question. As I shared earlier, not being diagnosed ADHD, but once I became aware of the symptoms and knowing that I was affected by that, being married 40 years, having 6 children, at least 2 of my children I knew needed services. Okay. And I would encourage our audience, our listening audience, what to do is to not run from it. Is to embrace it, have your child screened, have them tested so that they can receive the services that they deserve. You're paying for it through your taxes. So by all means, get the services that they absolutely need, because as a result of that, both of my youngsters, I homeschooled for 2 years, and then my brain came back to me where it was supposed to be, because that wasn't my long suit. But what I did learn was that those youngsters that received those services excelled much further beyond where they would have had I been in a position of, I don't want anyone to know, I really don't want to do that.
Right.
This is for your child.
Yeah. And if I could also interject that at the infancy stage,
I am a partner with the Early Head Start program.
Awesome.
So at this point, birth to 18 months, these children get free diapers, free wipes, free baby formula. They have BMI checks. They have, we do toothbrushing. These children also have the creative curriculum, which is the curriculum that we use. And these children are, they're tracked from the time of birth until they become 3 years old in the Early Head Start program. So we understand that infancy is key. And I noticed that your book talks about the key, using your keys. And I really look forward to continuing the early childhood importance and sharing that with our parents, because we have a policy council, parent policy council, so parents become understood, they understand the legislative process in the council, and they're getting involved on a more resourceful level for their children.
Thank you so much.
Listen, friends, our time is rapidly getting away from us, but there's just a question, 1 or 2, that I want to add before we close out this conversation. And I want to give Sister Marks an opportunity to respond to this question. And then I want to give Tanya an opportunity to comment on the question and the response that we received. Sister Marks, you mentioned that you are a 1981 graduate of North Babylon High School
Correct.
with Rich Schaefer,
Correct.
who is the Town of Babylon supervisor.
Yes.
And he recently honored our father by renaming the intersection of Whitneck Road and Albany Avenue to Andy C. Daddy Luter Way, primarily because 40 years ago, Daddy Luter led the campaign to change that intersection, which was a blighted community, crime and crack infested, and he helped to change the optics on that corner. So here's the question that I want to ask. Give us a quick background, because we remember, or at least I do, remember that corner being populated with the Associated,
Yes.
with Barbershop, Council's Pool Hall, Young's Tavern. It was a treacherous place to go. Rick Schaefer says, I'm sorry, what one of the public officials said, he said, I grew up on this alley and I knew not to go to Great Neck Road and Albany Avenue. So it is such a refreshing change from Councils and Associated and Young's to now see a learning institution on this corner that was blighted and crime infested. Quickly, in the 2 minutes that we have left, tell us quickly how that happened.
Well, I know that when I worked for the town of Babylon, I used to go to meetings on that corner. And it was exactly all that you said. And I realized that I was the first business to invest in the North Amityville community, because the Child Care Center was the first thing that opened. It was before the bank, before the police substation opened, or before Rite Aid across the street. And I always tell the students during career day, it was the community that decided what they wanted, when they wanted it, and how they wanted it to operate. Not government. The government asked the community. And so when you have a community like North Amityville, then all you have to do is give them the open door. They're going to run with it. So I found that I get a lot of people that come in that tell me about the history of what happened on this spot right here in my building. And I'm very proud to be a part of that change. It was one of the largest redevelopment projects in the country, if not just the state of New York. And I just have to say that it has changed. We still have a ways to go. I really want to see, a lot more transpire, and it's just been just a proud moment, and I wanted to make everyone proud. It's been 22 years since we opened, and been able to weather the storms, but not without community support, and I want to thank you all for that.
You're so welcome. Listen, we're going to let Tanya close us out today. Her expertise is in the area of business and business development and entrepreneurship, so I'm sure that she has a perspective and even an opinion to share on this particular item as we sign off for this week.
Well, I want to thank Alicia for having the vision to bring this to the North Amityville community. I will always say to Alicia, I am so proud of your accomplishments. And I am champion of economic development, because it is so important in our community that we own our own. It's our schools, our banks. When we can get to the point that we understand and appreciate the power of the dollar and the power of it in our community, and how we can really make a difference in the lives, not only for us, but for generations to come. So Alicia, thank you for being who you are, what you do with such passion, with such compassion, and just the power of a sister. And and it just means so much to us. And thank you again for coming.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate it.
We have reached the conclusion of this show, and I hope you have found it to be very informative. Until next time, Presiding Officer Dwayne Gray.